Hello, my name is Paula Powell, and today I will be presenting research from my dissertation study entitled Exploring Jamaican Teachers' Subjectivities in Post-Colonial Education and Autoethnography and Narrative Inquiry. To get started, I would like to present an overview of Jamaica and the education system. So Jamaica is the largest island in the English-speaking Caribbean. The history is deeply rooted in slavery. Following the abolition of slavery in 1834, a stratified society emerged, and Jamaicans of Black ancestry were consigned to the lowest class. Over time, however, Jamaicans have come to view schooling as being analogous to upward mobility. Although schools have grown in diversity, equity and inclusivity continue to be problematic. And according to Evans, while education is alluring for the poor, schools have continued to be sites where social order is instituted and the post-class slavery system is perpetuated. Now, research have argued that the colonial encounters have shaped the culture. Therefore, those encounters have impacted the food, the language, the education system, and so forth. These encounters have led to challenges such as poverty and illiteracy. Since 2008, for example, there has been a spike in poverty with 21.2% of the population living below the poverty line, and children make up about 25% of this number. In 2017, a report by the National Education Inspectorate revealed that 79% of schools did not meet the Ministry of Education's targets in mathematics and English. The push to reduce illiteracy and poverty in Jamaica is nothing new. Elected in 1972, then Prime Minister Michael Manley advocated for an egalitarian approach to schooling. Today, Vision 2030 Jamaica is the main influence on education goals. The plan is based on a shared vision to advance Jamaica as a developed country within the global context. In the reading of the budget for 2020-2021, $117 billion was allocated to the Ministry of Education. This was $5 billion more than the previous year. And the justification made was that education is a key indicator for economic development and future growth. Therefore, money needed to be pumped into this sector. However, one must consider whether money can sufficiently address the education sector goal of attaining Vision 2030 Jamaica. So the statement of the problem for this research really focuses on the continued exhibition of colonial characteristics in Jamaica 200 years post-slavery. Researchers have addressed varying legacies in their work. So for example, Frank, he focused on the exclusion of Jamaican Creole from the curriculum, and Ruth really focused on the one-size-fits-all curriculum as an aspect of schooling that perpetuates colonial characteristics. At the same time, other researchers have argued that teaching and learning artifacts such as textbooks have been sources of colonial reproduction, and students who matriculate to teachers' colleges have been leaving their preparation programs unprepared to resist the legacies. Now, while the curriculum in Jamaica has been reformed to reflect an increased Caribbean attitude, the focus on Western ideologies and the continued developmental challenges have resulted in failure to effect real changes to the education sector. This research, therefore, aims to explore the role of colonial legacies in Jamaican education. As a researcher, I'm interested in learning how teachers' subjectivities impact teaching and learning in post-colonial societies. The philosophical definition for subjectivity will be used in this study. So the definition holds that subjectivity is the manipulation of Black subjects through the use of the white liberal ethos. This therefore results in Black subjects becoming tokens of whiteness. The following questions will guide this study. How have the legacies of British colonialism impacted education in Jamaica? What characteristics of British colonialism can be traced to modern day education in Jamaica? What role do teacher-educator programs and the Ministry of Education play in reproducing colonial characteristics? And finally, how have the legacies of colonialism influenced teachers' concept of social justice? The study will be framed in two theoretical constructs. So the first is post-colonial theory, and proponents of this theory really argue that colonialism created an imbalance between first world countries and developing countries. As a result, former colonies have remained dependent on developed countries for support. And as a result of this as well, Young has argued that independence is an illusion for these former colonies. Post-colonial theorists therefore seek to turn the world upside down by examining the legacies of colonialism in the present. The second framework is culturally responsive teaching, which is more of a pedagogical framework. And this one is rooted in the tenets of critical theory. Critical theorists challenge what we think we know as a way of identifying power imbalance in an unjust society. They claim that knowledge is the basis for power and that knowledge wars have been used over time to subjugate the other. Dr. Geneva Gay and Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings therefore argue that CRT is essential for disrupting the cycle of marginalization, particularly in urban schools. Now, why is this study significant? While the study may not immediately impact education reform or teacher practice in Jamaica, it definitely underscores the complexity of education in developing countries. The study will also add to the body of literature surrounding the disruption of coloniality and positivistic views. The study will, in addition to this, fill the critical awareness gap associated with pedagogical practice and curriculum development in Jamaica. And while a number of studies have examined the effects of colonialism on former colonies, the literature is sparse when it comes to subjectivities and how educators work to resist or reproduce colonial legacies. In reviewing the literature, a number of themes emerge. Due to time constraints, I will provide an overview of just a few of those themes that were highlighted in the literature. So the first theme is the categorization of schools. So the public school system in Jamaica consists of 4 main levels: early childhood, primary, high, and tertiary. Other categories do exist, for example, the private schools and the all-age schools. The second theme is intervention. So in 2010, the Ministry of Education introduced a performance proficiency pathway, a component of the ministry's accountability system that holds employees accountable for student outcomes. Another major theme is the national standards curriculum. Now, a 2004 task force on education expressed that the curriculum prior to the NSC was overly content-based and it had failed to focus on transferable skills. The NSC shifted focus towards increasing students' confidence and productivity, developing identity, awareness of identity and citizenship, and also ensuring that graduates are successful lifelong learners. Another theme is high stakes testing. So Jamaica, like the United States, has a testing culture. Teacher training was another theme that emerged. According to Roof and Miller, the theory-based curriculum used in teacher preparation programs have been identified as a factor that affects teacher quality. They argue that the teacher training curriculum should be reformed to meet the demands of Vision 2030 as well. Bilingual education is another theme that emerged in the literature. So Jamaica inherited an education system where the English as a mother tongue approach is used. The Jamaican Creole, which is a language spoken by the general population, has long been positioned as an illegitimate language and is widely viewed as the fragmented language of a fragmented people. To address the dilemma, however, the bilingual education project was piloted between 2004 and 2008 for students in grades 1 to 4. This was 15 years after the National Association of Teachers of English recommended that the Jamaican Creole be utilized in schools. Overall, the pilot was a success, but the ministry concluded that it was not suitable, being that there was no standardized writing system in place and public opinion had been somewhat negative. The final 2 themes are instructional practice and research on CRT. Ruth argued that learning is only possible if teaching is context responsive. And as a result, the emphasis on high stakes testing in urban schools presents a challenge, and the process must be humanized. In terms of CRT, Brown, Jeffy, and Cooper advanced their own conceptual framework of the pedagogical theory. And within this framework, they proposed 5 major themes, which are being used in this study. So the 5 themes were used to develop the culturally responsive lesson plans and assignments rubric. This is a researcher developed instrument. In terms of the methodology, a qualitative research design is being used. Within the design, 2 qualitative traditions are also being utilized. So the first tradition is autoethnography. According to Ellis and Boschner, this gives researchers the freedom to consider personal experience in their work. Paulus, on the other hand, argues that although the tradition places the researcher's experiences at the center of the process, it is still a data-driven technique that uses writing as a main form of inquiry. The next tradition is narrative inquiry, and this is being used to understand the participants' experiences. So within this study, teachers will be recruited, and according to Clendenin and Connolly, teachers' experiences should be studied narratively since they lead storied lives. Therefore, the narratives that will be explored within this study will construct counter stories to the master narrative regarding teacher practice in Jamaican education. The study will be conducted in 4 phases. First, I will reconstruct my personal narratives of being a student in 3 of the 4 main levels of schooling during the post-Manley era. Second, I will use second-order narratives to highlight the experiences of the participants. In the 3rd phase, I will analyze documents such as curriculums and lesson plans. And in the 4th and final phase, I will engage in deep and purposeful reflection of the constructed narratives, the personal narratives, and the documents. No more than 10 teachers will be recruited for this study. A snowball sampling technique will be used. I will contact the principals at the identified sites to get recommendations for potential participants. And COSA argues that this method highlights the researcher's level of respect for the school's hierarchical culture, and it might also serve to justify the participants' role in the study. So teachers must be veteran teachers with a minimum of 10 years experience. They must teach at an urban primary school or high school. They must also teach English language, English literature, history, or social studies, and they must have attended an educator program in the British Caribbean to participate. Semi-structured interviews will be used and document reviews to collect the data. However, prior to collecting any data, approval will be sought from IRB. Participants will also be asked to sign a consent form. All interviews will be audio recorded and video recorded via Zoom, and then transcriptions will be retrieved following those interviews. The use of 2 qualitative approaches will help ensure dependable and credible results. Member checks will also be performed to strengthen the findings, and an audit trail will be used to detail each step of the research process. Now, to analyze the data, the 3-dimensional narrative inquiry space proposed by Clendenin and Connolly will be used. And this is because this analytical space allows the researcher to focus on the lived and told stories of the participants. Within the analytical inquiry space, there are 5 dimensions. These are inward, outward, backward, forward, and place. Of course, there are limitations, so the findings cannot be generalized because of the design being used. And due to the fact that I'm a teacher and I attended school in Jamaica, I might over-identify with the participants, which might also serve to limit the study. In terms of implications, teachers who fail to view classrooms through a culturally responsive lens run the risk of reproducing colonial legacies in their work. And in order to achieve Vision 2030 Jamaica, it is critical for urban teachers working in Jamaica's classrooms to re-envision curriculum as lived and not just as planned. These are my selected references. Thank you. Please feel free to reach out to me with any questions you might have. I have left my email contact for you all. Thank you.